Thank you for coming. And I'd like to introduce our speaker, Carol Duborowski. I have her personal profile here, which is enormous. This young lady does a lot, but she is a regional representative for the Free Methodist Foundation Financial Services. And she serves the River and PCJC and APU. That's her area. But she has so many positions that she has worked in, that all areas. She's worked in missions. She's very proud of the fact that she has supported many of our Free Methodist missionaries as well. And she right now is serving as the treasurer of the Southern California Conference. And on top of all of this, she has a full-time job. Oh, wow. So I want to introduce Carol Duborowski, please.
Thank you so much, May, especially you. She put up with a whole bunch of emails from me, and I am just honored to be here today. This is just exciting. And to worship with you guys this morning, I have to say that if we lived closer, I would be part of this church. Your church is amazing. We are honored to be able to visit many different churches in this role. And I have to say this, and I'm not just saying it because you guys are part of this church, but you have something very special. And Pastor Dave is amazing. So, but I also want to introduce my partner in crime is my husband, David. We've been married 37 years. And he's put up with me for that long. I couldn't do this without him. So when the foundation, and I'm going to give you just a brief history before we get into estate planning, so you can understand a little bit of a bigger picture of what we're all about. But in 2017, the foundation approached us and asked me if I wanted to join the team. And we spent some time praying about it. And Dave and I have been involved with ministry for over 20 years. But the thing is, and I'm sure some of you married couples get this, Dave was doing his thing, what he was gifted at, and I was doing my thing. And we got so busy, sometimes we didn't even see each other because we were so busy. And then we decided, hey, that's probably not the best thing for our marriage. We were just so entrenched in ministry that we took a little bit of a sabbatical from doing internal ministries just to spend more time together and where we felt God was calling us to our community. But then when the foundation came, we thought, this would be a great thing to do together because we love our Free Methodist family. We were visiting churches anyways to just really understand what it was like to belong. So we took this on together. Dave, although the foundation hired me, Dave is just as much, trust me, a part of this. So he put together some packets, which we'll hand out for you guys if you're interested, some little takeaways of things that we'll talk about today, but also some other tools for you to use. But what I wanted to do is just give you a brief history of who FMF is, because I don't think a lot of people understand and or really know the partnership that we have with your church, with your conference, and with the Free Methodist denomination. So that's who we are, and that's who we are representing, I should say, is the Free Methodist Foundation. The foundation started in 1931, so we've been around for a long, long time. We started managing just investment funds for the general church for the denomination. Then in the 1950s, they realized that some churches couldn't get funding for capital improvement projects, building loans, or even buying churches. Banks weren't loaning money to churches because they were a risk, okay? So then in the 1950s, they formed what they call the loan fund, which still exists today, where investors can go in and invest in churches. So there's CD programs, just like you would have at your bank, and there's rates, and it's all regulated. Okay, so we have just the same regulations as you would see from a bank or any other financial institution. So they implemented the loan fund for investors in the Free Methodist family, and so that we could support our Free Methodist family, the churches. Then in the 1950s, we realized, oh, hey, people need comprehensive financial services, which include estate and gift planning that we're going to cover today. So I'm not going to go over the other financial aspects of what we're responsible for. May and the team wanted me to specifically concentrate on estate and gift planning, but there are other services that are encompassed in this. So what our mission statement, you could click it one more time. What our mission statement is all about is helping you manage the resources God entrusted in your care. And I love today, Pastor Dave said this, and I apologize, I forgot his name, but one of your youth pastors even said, everything you have, right, is a God-given gift that God has entrusted to you. And all of us are on a different journey. And that's what makes FMF so unique, is that we come alongside of you no matter where you're at on your journey to help you manage those resources. So our estate and gift planning, you could click through that a little bit. There we go. We're able to work together with you. Somebody asked me a question earlier on a specific requirement. Again, I'm going to give you a high level of estate and gift planning, what the difference is between a trust and a will. And I know some of you have specific questions that I'll take some of those at the end of this. But I need to start off with saying this, is everybody's in a different place and everybody has unique situations. And that's why it's important to meet one-on-one with myself. Now I'm gonna give you this caveat. I'm not the expert at some of the tax questions. I'm not necessarily the expert in even maybe some of your specific situations, but that's what makes our team so incredible. I mean, Dave will attest to this. We have a team that is located all across the United States and we work together. So it doesn't matter what territory. I handle somebody in Illinois because I happen to know them. We're not territorial. We don't get paid commission. How this works is that the conferences and the denominations should support our work because we're all about building the kingdom of God together. So this is just what I just explained earlier. You could click through this whole slide. The Free Methodist Foundation supports the ministry of the Free Methodist Church USA through estate and gift planning. Like I said, the loan fund, endowment accounts, charitable trusts, managed accounts, and pension funds. For those of you who don't know, the foundation does handle the pension funds for all of our pastors across the nation. So that's just an overall of who we are. Okay, you could go anywhere to get your estate and your estate plan done. But the reason why we're here today is because we want to partner with you and with your church and with the denomination and your conference to help further God's kingdom. So that's what makes us unique. Okay, I'm sure most of you can answer this question. Kiki, you can click through this. What is the greatest book ever written about money? That's right. We want to make this interactive, so feel free. I don't like being up here alone, especially with the camera staring at me, but yes, the Bible. So I don't know, does anybody know about how many times the Bible mentions about money? Does anybody have an idea? Okay, it's over 2,000 times. Okay, and I could list tons of verses. So obviously God wants us to get this, right? And so if you're looking at some of the verses, one is Psalm 24, the earth is the Lord's and everything in it. The world and all its people belong to him. And it was neat today during your service, Dave said something, I was like, wow, this is just leading right into this, about how God has given us everything and we need to trust him in what we have. One of the mission that I stated earlier is that we're about stewardship well done. And I love what Pastor Dave said is well done, good and faithful servant, right? And the aspect of you going into a whole discipleship program is exciting because this is also part of that, a journey of stewardship, of not only stewarding your time, your resources, but your finances as well. And so one of the ways the foundation looks at this and with estate planning is there's 3 pillars that we like to look at and go through with our clients. And the first one, and this is, again, if you go to another attorney, you probably won't hear this. But the first one is, what do you care about? What deeply moves you personally and your family? What's your mission? If you don't have one, I would encourage you to think about that because your estate plan should reflect that. That's part of your legacy, what you're going to live behind. What's important to you today? May shared with you, one of the important things for us is missions for Dave and I. So that is reflected in our estate plan of how we're leaving part of our legacy. We want it to go forward with what we were passionate about while we're living. The other pillar is growth. Obviously, it's like John Wesley. Can you say, does anybody know what John Wesley would always say? Save all you can. You know, I don't know if you guys know that saying, but it's really growing your assets to achieve your mission. So you do want to grow and be wise with what God's given you. But the most important thing is, as you're growing it, is then leading a life of generosity and sharing. Okay, so this is where my partner is going to come in. Can anybody say that? So Dave actually looked this up on YouTube. It was kind of a creepy video of a pastor going through these words. But does anyone know who that is in the Bible?
Moses' mother.
Yes, Moses' mother. That's right. Yeah, that's right. So if you can imagine taking your 3-month-old son and giving him up, right? And we know that the times, we all know those stories. And Dave and I had the honor in 2019 to go to Egypt. And it was an interesting adventure in itself. It truly was one of those pure pressure adventures where our friends talked us into it. We didn't want to go, but we're so thankful that we did. And we didn't know what God had in store for us, but God took us through the whole journey of Moses. And so we stood there at the Red Sea, approximately where his mom would have released him. We saw the areas where he studied under his Egyptian mom. We saw the artifacts of things that happened. We actually went through the Sinai Peninsula, which I do not necessarily recommend for anybody. Traveled through there. And then we stood on top of Mount Sinai, but where he overlooked the promised land, Nebo. So you were there. So just amazing. But as I think about this story of trusting God and releasing, that's what I think we're called to do as Christians, is to learn to trust and release and not necessarily just hold on so tight, especially during times like this. So, I think that one of the questions I want to ask you, just for you to think about as you're thinking about your estate plan that maybe you already have or that you want to generate, is what does he want you to release and trust in him that is so huge that you can't even begin to imagine? Okay, so I'm going to just kind of leave you with that thought, just like Moses' mom did during that time. You could, yeah. So this is a pyramid, what we just generated to kind of walk through the stewardship journey. And the foundation is what we're going to talk about today. Where you developing a financial plan, a giving plan, an estate plan, and a budget, which most of you probably already have some parts of those foundations, if not all of it. But that's something that as we sit down together, if you're interested in meeting with me, we could go through where you're at on that journey. And there's reasons why we take you through this step. One of the things with COVID, as we couldn't meet, we couldn't do church visits. We were trying to do as much through Zoom as we could. But one of the things that the foundation has done is spend a lot of time developing each one of these steps. And I would encourage you to look at our website. We have so much free information on there. And there's even small group materials that you could do here at church or in your family that goes through how to do a budget, how to do a financial plan. And then there's even some estate planning tools that are available online. But I'm also happy to walk you through those. So we're going to get into the estate planning. So what is estate planning? I mean, most of us probably know that, but it's taking inventory of your assets, your current assets, and determining the best way to distribute those assets upon death, while maximizing your legacy and minimizing taxes, right? We don't want to give any more to the state of California or or the US government than what we have to. We're called to pay our taxes, but you don't want to give above and beyond what you need to, right? So, and it's also planning for incapacity. So if something was to happen to you, and we have some live examples of that. We were blessed to do somebody's estate plan. It was January, and they came down with COVID in February. And so he wasn't capable of making some decisions, but he had the documents in place, and his family was able to carry out his wishes. Now, praise God, he's survived, but he's one of those long-term, having some long-term issues. So that became very real, and God really just emphasized again how important this ministry is and getting the word out for people to get their documents done. So approximately what we found is 70% of Americans do not have a simple estate plan. And there's about 80%, and in fact, I probably have met one today, that their existing estate plan documents are outdated or flawed in some way. So what we have found when we're reviewing different estate plans, even if you have one that's already in place from another attorney, you want to amend it or you have questions about it, we're happy to look at it for you. Okay, so I want to emphasize that just because you didn't start the journey with us doesn't mean you can't join us. All right. We encourage people to not procrastinate. And I have to admit, for a while with our estate plan, it seemed a little daunting when you're looking at a form and all the information. You want to cross your eyes and go, oh my goodness, this is a lot of information. But once it's done, it's just a blessing to your family and your loved ones. And we're here to gently encourage you, to get that done and not to procrastinate it. So one example that I want to give you about procrastination is, as May mentioned, I have a full-time job that I do, and I work in downtown LA. And I had an employee who she got sick about 8 months into her, she had lung cancer, and about 8 months into her sickness, I was talking to her about estate plan. And so I tried real hard not to cross the line, right? But I really cared about this individual. Bottom line, she did nothing. Okay, she ended up passing away. She had over probably about $800,000 or $900,000 in her pension fund that I oversaw. That's part of my responsibility. By the time probate was done, and we'll talk about that a little bit, by the time that was done, her daughter, her only living daughter, got $30,000. And that's after, so her pension plan was gone, her house was gone, all her assets, and her daughter got about $30,000. So the state doesn't care about you and your family at the end of the day. They don't. So the next question is, Who has control of your future and your finances right now, if you're thinking about it? If something was to happen to you on the way home from church, what do you have in place? So we basically can give to three entities. We can give to our family, we can give to the government, and we can give to ministries. And what I want to encourage you guys, truly, for those who don't have an estate plan or a will, any documentation in place, I want to encourage you to go up on the California State Controller's website. It's really scary because you could see all the probate cases that are in there. And this is what I always tell people. I'm going to try to find out who signed up for this class. I don't want to see your names on that list because now you guys are responsible, right? Because you can hear, and there's this old hear and obey thing that I think is biblical, is once you know what the right thing to do is, you have to make that move. Okay, so financial incapacity. So the probate court rules who will make financial decisions for you if you don't have documents in place. I think most of you understand that. And that includes durable power of attorney. Okay, but if you, I'm sorry, that includes if you don't have any documents, but if you have a durable power of attorney in place, that's what we consider a wise steward. Now, what a durable power of attorney is, in case most of you don't know, this is a living while you're living. Okay, this has nothing to do with after you pass away. So for example, the individual that I was talking about that had COVID and was in the hospital, and he was in a medically induced coma. While he was in that coma, his mom passed away, unfortunately. And he was in the coma for like 3 months or something like that. He was the only survivor of his mom's estate. So there were documents that needed to be done for her estate, but he's in a medically induced coma. Who's going to do it? So either his mom's estate would have gone to probate at that point if he didn't have a POA in place. But because he had a POA in place, of course, they called me because we did the documents. I was able to get them connected with the attorney because I'm not an attorney. So, but I got them connected and networked them, and they were able to take care of everything while he was recovering from COVID. So that's a real life example of that taking place. So it's when you become incapacitated for some reason, sickness, dementia, any of those things, you don't want the state making the decisions. You want your family members or your spouse to make those decisions. That's considered wise stewardship. Next slide. So same thing with healthcare. Who will make the decisions for you? If you're in the hospital, you're in a medically induced coma, and we had a pastor in the Southern California conference that this happened. And I have to tell you, I struggled with that because I met with this pastor and they did not put the documents in place, okay, of what they wanted in case something happened. So the state actually made the decision to take them off life support. That was the hardest thing I had to walk through, is to try to minister to the family. You know, here I am ministering to the family of a pastor and having the state tell us it's time for them to go off life support. We're no longer going to pay the bill. And so those decisions are really critical. And I'm trying to give you guys life examples because this is so important. So important because the family was devastated. So having a healthcare directive is critical. So at death, we talked a lot about probate. And I'm going to get into what the difference is between a will and a living trust. Okay. So a will, if you have a will, it's better than nothing. Okay. And there is a difference, and it's really based on And we would sit down and determine that, or you could do your own study with what makes sense for you to have a will or a living trust. But most of the time we encourage people to do trusts if you have a certain amount of assets. And there's reasons for that for tax purposes, et cetera, which we could talk about. But at best, to have a will is you're making the decisions of what you want done. However, the important thing for you to remember is a will is a public document and it will still require to go through probate. Okay, now it'll go into probate and probably go out of probate fairly quickly, but you will still be paying a probate attorney. Okay, so, and knowing an example, and what I mean by public document, it'll show up on the state controller's website, all right? And people can contest that. So part of the reason why, when I was telling you about my employee, Marilyn, said she didn't have anything and it went to probate, people contested it and they were on it. Her son, who had passed away years before, had kids she didn't know about. The kids came forward for part of the estate. Okay, so those are real stories. It's not just, this isn't like a Hallmark movie, bad movie. This is real stuff that happens. So, and there's stalkers on probate websites. Okay, so you can imagine what's happening now with social media and whatnot. They know somebody's passed away. You know, Social Security office gets notified right away. And this happened because my husband's father passed away in December. And it was amazing to see how quickly people knew, right? And that's the downside of how information travels so fast, and it's not always good people. So that's with a will and no will, that's basically what's happening. But a will, I do want to encourage you, a will is better than not having anything. Okay, even though it still goes through probate, your wishes will be honored. The state won't determine them, but it's still maybe not the best choice. Okay, so contract law, these are contracts that bypass probate. And even if you have a trust, these items, because they're considered contract law, do not go into your trust unless you make the trust your beneficiary. And that's a lot of detail for today. I'm trying to stay at this 5,000 foot level. But things like life insurance, your 403, 401, Bs that you have beneficiaries on, those are considered contract law. And if you don't have multiple beneficiaries, I would encourage you to do that and look at your different policies that you have. But that's something we go over if we sit down and go through your estate planning. We'll go through even the contract law situations that you may have in place. Okay, so I already covered some of this, but the revocable living trust and contract law. So what happens is, if with a trust, just to put it simply, when you form a trust, you basically don't own anything, your trust owns it. That's why they call it a living trust. Your name, you are the trustee of your living trust, and you'll put assets. I think if you click one more time, that little dollar sign moves. Maybe not. Yeah, there you go. See, they did that little fancy thing to where you're putting your assets into your trust, with the exception of those areas that I just told you about. One of the other things is part of an estate plan is they'll do a pour over will for you. And you're probably questioning why, if I have a trust, but that's more of an umbrella to make sure that if you all of a sudden opened a bank account and you forgot to put it into your trust, or you bought a piece of property and maybe the deed didn't go right into your trust right away, the pour over will is sort of like an insurance policy that it'll say, hey, they have a trust and this is their will, and probate will just bounce it right in and out. It goes really fast. It's more of just if you want to look at it like an insurance, so to speak, to your trust. Okay, so that's part of what we do as a complete package. But I'm just going to go into this just a little bit and just to show you a scenario with your estate plan on how you can pass it on and give it twice. So one of the areas that we, as I started out, love and encourage as the Free Methodist Foundation is the charitable giving piece. That's really why I'm standing before you. And it's exactly what Pastor Dave said, is for the future generations. I mean, I could have just gone, okay, I don't need to do the seminar because Dave said everything in the sermon today, you know, and it's true. It's all about the future generations and pouring into the generations. And so many people misunderstand this and don't get the charitable piece and what your estate plan can do. Because you can give an outright gift at your passing. Let's just say your estate is worth $500,000. You want to give your children $50,000 right away, you know, but just use for the sake of numbers. And you want to put the rest into a charitable remainder trust and have them, because they might not be able to handle the $500,000 immediately, let's say. So you put it into the remainder into a charitable remainder trust and you have it invested and you pay them out over a period of 20 years, let's say. You give them, and it's whatever you want to set up, we work with, and they get a payout. But then what's remaining in there after the investments goes to your ministry of choice or charity of choice. So this is one example. Well, and there's a tax write-off too, as a result, because you're donating. That's right. The tax is for, thank you, Dave. That's why he's partner. Stand up here. Taxes are everything. So this is also a way to shelter some of the taxes because you're giving to charity. Okay, so this just shows where, and it's an amazing, I didn't really understand this a whole lot until somebody with the foundation sat down with my specific scenario and went through it. And it was crazy with what we could still leave our son and still give to ministry at the same time. So we talked, you could click through all of this. This has a lot of words in it, but we talked a lot about this, and I want to emphasize again, this is really what the foundation is about. It's about identifying ministries that resonate with your heart and helping you plan gifts during your lifetime and beyond. So we have a lot of different gift planning tools that you can look at our website. I can talk to you about individually. But again, it's understanding what your mission is and where your heart is. And part of the benefit, as Dave said, is also to help you reduce taxes, okay, by being charitable. So I stated this, and you can tell that I'm re-emphasizing it. It's using your resources to advance God's kingdom. So our greatest desire is to support you in caring for your family, for the ministries you love during your lifetime and beyond. And so John Wesley, he made financial goals to live on less for many years and investing in the kingdom of God for future generations. And, you know, as Free Methodists, all of us sitting here, aren't we glad that he did? I mean, look at what our denomination is and the impact we have on the world. So, you know, personally, I work actually for somebody who's probably a multimillionaire, wouldn't you say, and then some, and he's not a Christian, and he's completely dissatisfied. You can see just the turmoil in his life. And then I've gone to Ethiopia and sat with the poorest of the poor, and you think you're going there to give them something, and I walked away going, oh my goodness, they taught me so much of how content they are. So there's a lesson somewhere in between there for us, right? That a life of significance is worth much more than dollars. It's measured by the impact your life has on others. So thus it's a net, right? joining your team. She's going to help you have more of an impact, right? And this is really coming alongside what you're doing. That's what we're all about, is helping you have that impact. So finances are a huge heart issue and a huge spiritual battleground, obviously, if that's why the Bible mentions it over 2,000 times. And one of the things, you know, when I went to Ethiopia and I was thinking, what an impact, you know, how can some of these people in Ethiopia have, you know, a great impact when they have nothing? But yet that's not true. They have everything. It's not about their finances. It's all this heart issue, and that they're able to give that away, and they have that freedom. And we tend so much as Americans specifically to just really store up our treasures, right? We have storage units everywhere, which just blew my mind when I came back from the mission trips in Ethiopia. It almost really bothered me that we actually pay to store stuff, right? And so the question is, when is enough enough? And when can you, like Moses's mom, really open your hand and release what the most precious thing to you is, and to trust God, like Pastor Dave said in today's sermon. So creating a legacy, one of the things that our estate and planning tool, and this is again up to you, but we do have part of the tool is a testimony, a Christian testimony that you could write yourself, or we have one that's read to the family at the time of your passing. And that also we, you know, an inheritance is not the money you leave, but how you leave it. So there's lots of statistics out there of how quickly people spend inheritance, or when they win the lotto, you hear about that, this big influx of money. So it's something for you to pause and think about. Not that your family isn't responsible, or your friends, or whoever you're thinking about, but how you leave it to carry your legacy forward is something for you to think deeply about. Setting an example for future generations that will find faithful. So that's huge. This is what your church is all about right here. So part of what you can do through your estate planning, just to throw it out there, is to be generous to your church here, Mission Valley, and you could be specific that it's to be used for future generations, for, you know, giving out Bibles to more than the second graders. Maybe it's to everybody, you know, who knows, whatever that stipulation is that you want to put on to help carry God's kingdom forward. So yeah, yep, that's it. And I already mentioned that we have a bunch of different services, but today may ask specifically for me to concentrate on estate and gift planning, but you can engage with the foundation because you're part of Mission Valley, part of the denomination. You can engage with us on any level. And you would go through me because I'm your regional rep, but as I explained earlier, I'm more like the general practitioner, you know, and I will vet. I'm not an expert on everything. And I want to set that caveat. I'm not a CPA, but I'm here to guide you to those experts on whatever your needs are, whether it's investment, or if you're interested in loan fund, you're interested in rolling over an IRA, using an IRA as a charitable gift, or estate planning. Any of those things, we could walk alongside of you. So some of the advantages of working through FMF, I had already mentioned, but one of them is really understanding your heart. And I'll say this on a personal level, we did our estate plan probably, I don't know, 15 years ago or so, and we did not do it with the foundation because we didn't know about the foundation. And this was the sad thing for me is we've been part of our denomination for over 20 years, and we never heard about the foundation. So when we joined, and we saw these resources, and truly, I have to say, our headquarters is in Michigan, and we've gone back there several times for training. I have never sat around a table of smarter people than the people at the foundation. These people are incredible. And I've sat around a lot of tables. I'm actually a CEO for a company in Los Angeles. So I've had a lot of exposure to a lot of different smart people. And this is not, I'm not selling you on anything. I'm just telling you the resources you have, because these people believe so much in advancing the kingdom of God. They've let go of some jobs from UBS, from Edward Jones, to sit at the table because they believe in working with people like you and to push forward just the advancement of the kingdom. So it's pretty amazing. So it's deciding, like, we're here to help you decide what assets to give, what your best giving method is, and how to divide your gift on multiple ministries. You could give anonymously. If you had $2 million and you didn't want Pastor Dave to treat you any different, although I don't think he would, or we hope not. But if you really wanted to keep it anonymous, you could and still get the charitable write-off and just know in your heart that you did what God's called you to do. So all of those areas, we're here to serve you. And the thing that I want to emphasize is, again, you're not paying me to be here. I'm supported by your conference and by the denomination. And so you don't pay for my time, but you do pay for your legal documents. So and it depends, I'm not going to quote you on anything because it depends on your situation, whether you're doing an amendment or a full living trust package. So it really depends on your situation. But I can tell you two things. One is we're way under market price because, like I said, Dave and I did ours many years ago. We never heard about the foundation. Then when we did, we were like, wow, we could have saved over $1,000, and had that $1,000 go towards ministry instead. And that's really why we hold our prices down, is for charitable giving. It's not, just if I could be blunt, not to save you a bunch of money, we're to encourage you to give that difference away. Okay, so that's one thing. And the other thing is that, like I said, we never heard about the foundation. So our mission is to get out to these churches. That's why I was so honored when May called. I was so excited because we have been part of your Pacific Japanese Conference, but conference time is difficult. Everybody's trying to get to where they're going and training or whatnot. But we have been here a couple times. But this is the intimate time that we could start building a relationship. And if you know people, this is where it goes from word of mouth to your other, they don't necessarily have to be part of the Free Methodist family, although we encourage that. But if you had a mother or a sister, and I have a relationship with you, I will not turn them away. I just want to put that, but we're not out there holding up banners of like, hey, because we want to make sure we're taking care of our Free Methodist family. And I think that's the last slide right there. And there's my ugly little picture you get to see. So I said we would finish by 1. It's 1 o'clock. I did want to ask if you had questions, if anybody has a question, like an overall question that you want to throw at me right now, I'm happy to take it. If you have individual questions, Dave can hand out, or you could come see Dave before you leave. My business card's in here. Feel free to email me. Emailing and texting work the best. You'll have my cell phone number. Those work the best for me. And I'm happy to connect with you on specific questions.
Did you have one question? Sure. You had talked about your employee who passed away with cancer, and through her retirement plan, her daughter was only able to get $30,000. But come back and think, she had a beneficiary through that plan, did she not? Because that would have helped her. So I didn't understand.
Well, what happened? That is correct. She did have a beneficiary, but what happened is the probate courts and the attorney fees sucked up all the money. Okay, she had a beneficiary, but her daughter was like, okay, her daughter was young in her 30s. You know, she didn't have much money in her savings account, so she had to pay these attorneys to defend her mom's estate. And it was heart-wrenching. Let me tell you, because I wrote the checks for those attorneys. And
So
it was,
even if we did it, we had beneficiary that doesn't help through the probate.
the state will get their money. Okay, and it's just like if you have, and this gets into a whole nother topic, but you have somebody who has a lot of Medicare bills and whatnot, and they pass away, they're gonna get their money. Okay, from beneficiaries. And so there's a lot that's complicated. That's why a trust is so important. It protects your assets now and moving forward.
Because I had an employee that also passed away, and he didn't have any, his only beneficiary was his sister-in-law, but she ended up getting most of his 401k. So that's why it was like,
But probably because nobody was fighting for it. See, in Marilyn's case, these grandkids that,
oh, I see.
okay,
so
because
that's-
it's a public
I get it.
document, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Okay, it was a public document, so these two grandkids wanted, you know, $250,000. They felt like they had the right to that. So, and you never, God forbid, but you don't know who will come up and claim to be your relative. Does anybody else have any other questions before I give it back to May? I want to honor your time. So thank you again. I hope that this was helpful to you. I hope it met your expectations. I know it was kind of high level, but it was truly an honor to be here today. And I want to thank you so much.